If you're a baseball fan, you may know the name Trevor Bauer, though unfortunately now his name may be more recognized by the lies about him than his performance on the field. But Trevor Bauer is a Major League Baseball pitcher who reached the height of the craft in 2020, winning the National League Cy Young Award while pitching for the Reds. He was the best pitcher in the league, in other words. In the offseason after, Bauer signed a new contract with the Dodgers and had a solid start to the 2021 season until July, when an accuser emerged and said that Bauer had sexually assaulted her in 2 separate encounters that spring. In a filing in LA County Court, this woman, now known to be Lindsay Hill, claimed that Bauer forced her into, quote, non-consensual sex at his Pasadena home, once in April and again in May. On that mere allegation alone, Major League Baseball ended Bauer's season and, at least temporarily, did major damage to his career. MLB put him on leave pending investigation, leave that extended the rest of the 2021 season, and then in spring 2022, MLB suspended Bauer for 324 games, or 2 full seasons, later reduced to a season and change. So Bauer hasn't thrown a pitch in the majors since she accused him. The Dodgers released him this past January, and with no other MLB team willing to take on the controversy, Bauer spent the last year pitching in Japan, where he was an all-star. Major League Baseball cited Bauer's supposed violation of the league's domestic violence policy as the reason for his punishment. The problem is that violation was never really adjudicated. His violation was not the result of a thorough investigation and a fair process. It was just a label assigned to him despite a lack of those things. And as it has now turned out, Trevor Bauer is a classic example of the due process reversal, guilty until proven innocent, and among the most egregious I can remember, because Trevor Bauer isn't just exonerated by the lack of evidence to support his accuser's claims, he's exonerated by legitimately proving himself innocent. The evidence from the accuser herself shows definitively she's a liar, and a very malicious one. And of course, that should have been the suspicion from the start, because even her initial claims made no sense. This accuser, Lindsay Hill, started speaking with Bauer on Instagram in spring 2021, and the two then met for interactions at least twice. The twice part is the major red flag. If someone forces you into sex, how likely are you to go back 3 weeks later, especially given the nature of the allegations here? Because this was not just, oh, he was a little aggressive with me and I asked him to tone it down next time. And he said that he would, but then he didn't. No, her allegation for what happened the first time is as nasty as it gets. With respect for community guidelines here, she said Bauer went to door number 2 without her consent, leaving her bleeding from behind and unable to walk. So this was not just, oh, he was a little rough with me and that worried me, but I still went back for seconds. This was, he R'd me in the B and I still went back for seconds. And that does not make sense, but that is what she said. And when she went back the second time, she said the violence continued. In the second encounter, she says he choked her to unconsciousness and punched her with a closed fist in the face multiple times. She presented pictures of her face with swelling, bruises, scratches, and a bloodied lip, though, as we'll get to, those injuries do not appear to have been legitimate. But the other factor for early doubt was the court evaluation, because it's not just us, in retrospect, with the benefit of new evidence now doubting her case. It was the court at the time, in summer 2021, before Trevor Bauer got a 2-year suspension from the league. Upon accusation, the court granted the accuser a temporary restraining order against Bauer, but upon evaluation that August, the judge removed the restraining order, concluding that Bauer did not pose any threat to her. Understand that the bar for getting a restraining order is about as low as it gets legally. This is not beyond a reasonable doubt at a criminal trial. Technically, in California, it's a preponderance of the evidence standard for a restraining order, but really, this is not a more likely than not standard. This is a maybe standard. Might he harm her in some way in the future? Possibly. And the judge said no. And if there's no chance that he'll harm her tomorrow, well, what are the chances that he did yesterday? In addition to the red flags from the start, they continued through investigation, and the case only collapsed from there. 6 months later, in February, the Los Angeles DA's office announced there would be no criminal charges against Bauer, citing a lack of evidence that he committed any crime. It didn't matter to Major League Baseball, though. They imposed their suspension of Bauer almost 3 months after law enforcement had already cleared him. With criminal claims now demonstrated false, Bauer started filing defamation lawsuits against media outlets that had called him a criminal abuser, including a false claim that he fractured his accuser's skull, and of course, against his accuser herself, Lindsay Hill. He sued her, she countersued him, and this week, the two agreed to settle the matter. And as part of that deal, Bauer is now free to talk about what happened and to show the evidence that the lawsuit uncovered. And that evidence is extremely damning. This was not some naive young woman who was starstruck with a pro athlete and got overtaken by him. This was a woman with a plot to extort him. She was texting friends before she even met him in person saying, "I'm going to get my claws into this guy to take his money."
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. A text Lindsay Hill sent to a friend before she ever even met me. "What should I steal?" she asked another, in reference to visiting my house for the first time. The answer? Take his money. So how might that work? "I'm going to his house Wednesday," she said. "I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll." Then, after the first time we met, "Net worth is 51 mil, she said. "Bitch, you better secure the bag," was the response. But how is she going to do that? "Need daddy to choke me out," she said. "Being an absolute whore to try to get in on his 51 million, read another text.
So she admitted ahead of time that the choking that she would later claim was a violent attack was actually just a ruse to scoop the guy's cash. And it sure looks like this ruse was a lot less violent than she claimed at the time. Because remember, the allegation was a visibly beaten face with photos to prove it. Well, here's a video she took the morning after the second violent encounter, looking completely unscathed and, in fact, very satisfied, presumably about a plot well executed.
This video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. You can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face.
Okay, well, maybe he beat her ass after that video, you might think? Very unlikely. As Bauer explains, video data and phone location data show she left right after recording it.
And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021.
This woman organized, executed, and admitted to a plot to extort the guy. One could argue it was a physical attack by her against him, actually, insofar as the physical contact was under false and deceptive pretenses. But Trevor Bauer is doing the debatably honorable thing by letting her off the hook. He pays her nothing, and she pays him nothing, and all he gets is the right to speak about the evidence and the truth publicly. He's not after her money or vengeance. He just wants his name cleared.
The lawsuit was never about the money for me. It was the only way for me to obtain critical information to clear my name. I also retained my right to speak publicly about the case, something I have not been at liberty to do since June of 2021. So, as of today, both lawsuits have been settled. Now, over the last 2 years, I've been forced to defend my integrity and my reputation in a very public setting. But hopefully this is the last time I have to do so.
And perhaps that's gracious and merciful, but should society be? Because as far as I'm concerned, this woman committed several crimes and abuses. Theft, at least attempted, extortion, false statements to police, perjury, or something close in court, as the judge found Hill to be, quote, misleading in her case against Bauer. Plus the defamation, and at least according to Bauer, she withheld evidence in the court battle.
During those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team.
But worst of all, this may actually be a habit, because note one key detail about Hill's text. She described Bauer as her, quote, next victim.
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers.
Now, of course, many of us say next victim in a completely innocent, exaggerated, joking context, but this is a context in which she actually was victimizing a guy, so Did she do this to others? If there is anything to be said for mercy, this woman is really pushing the limits of that virtue, since she won't face any criminal penalty, she won't face any civil penalty and money to Trevor Bauer. In fact, she's still going to get paid. For reasons I absolutely do not understand at all, her insurance company is paying her $300,000, something to do with her legal defense. For what? Did she have a stupid whore policy? Her words, not mine. Did she have an insurance policy to protect her from the consequences of her self-described absolute whoring business model? So, if we're not going to learn our lessons through the legal system, I sure hope we as men learn them philosophically, and that's my only dispute with Trevor Bauer here. Yes, he's the victim. Yes, he was abused by her. No, I am not saying that this situation is his fault. But just like it's wise to have a gun to protect against home invasion, even if the invasion is the invader's fault, or it's wise to wear a seatbelt to protect against a car crash, even if the crash is the reckless driver's fault, men, especially men with assets to protect, have to be careful and deliberate about their selection of women. If a woman approaches you and says, "Hey, I like it rough and I give it away for free," well, accept that invitation and it's going to be you who gets it rough, just like Bauer did. It's our job as men to select our women properly based on how they'll perform as wives and mothers, not based on how they'll perform in the fantasy of the evening. And yes, that is a mutual deal. It is also incumbent upon us to provide our women with the commitment necessary to ensure that they can perform and uphold those roles well. Proper focus in this area is the difference between building your future and having it robbed from you. But if you can't control your urges and you must indulge, well, at least learn the other lesson from Trevor. If you're gonna pick a stupid slut, please be smart and make sure that she isn't. Pick a slut stupid enough to confess to her crimes in writing while committing them, and to record video of her lies in progress. If you're going low, you go all the way low, just like Trevor did. Deep in the dirt and all the way to the backstop. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Minds, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.